So, welcome everybody. Welcome to this three days series of VCM on auditing standards. And today we are on the first day. It is organized by the Pune branch of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. I welcome you all. I welcome CA Samir Ladha, who is our chairman and treasurer. I welcome our eminent speaker, CA Dheeraj Sharma, and of course, all the professional fraternity who is here to attend this seminar. I request CA Samir Ladha to give the welcome address.
Well, thank you, Smita. And today's eminent speaker and my very good friend Dheeraj Sharma from NIRC is always ready to help and come to for say any session for Pune branch. I personally thanks Dheeraj to you. To today's eminent speaker Dheeraj Sharma, so today's MOC Smita Kunte, and all the August audience. Welcome on this in this series of standard of auditing. Today's first session, and almost 300 participants have joined. It's a already welcome step. Thank you, participants, for such a wonderful response. It is my pleasure to inform that Pune branch has, in this current year up to today, Pune branch has already raised almost more than 1 lakh CP hours. It is really very good initiatives due to efforts from all of the managing committee members and all wonderful participants from you. So I personally thanks to all the participants for such wonderful audience. I also like to announce that in upcoming days we have national conference on GST. It is already announced, and we will be having a national conference on direct tax in the first week of August. We are also planning some RRC in the month of August. Soon we will make the announcement of RRC. So all the participants, please keep your eyes on the messages on website of Pune branch so that you can participate each and every sessions and take the knowledge. We have Sarvesh Joshi sir, past vice chairman in audience. Welcome, Sarvesh Joshi sir. You are always there to help for Pune branch. Thanks a lot. And Dheeraj sir, thank you very much from all the participants. You are always there to welcome for Pune branch. And it's also my pleasure to inform audience that this whole series of standards of auditing is coordinated by Dheeraj only. Thanks, Dheeraj, for your great cooperation. With this welcome, I hand over to Smita for further process. Over to Smita.
Thank you. So I have this responsibility. It is indeed Dheeraj Sharma. In few words, he's a chartered accountant by profession and a social reformer by passion. He is the immediate past chairman of Gurugram branch, which is the largest branch in the Indian region. Other than being a fellow member of the institute, he is pursuing his PhD in human resource practice for sustainable development. He has also obtained various certifications in diverse areas, such as certification in financial accounting and analysis from IIM Bangalore, certification in emotional intelligence from IIT Kharagpur. These are just to name a few. He has conducted many workshops and training programs. He has presented papers in national and international conferences. To acknowledge work and talent, he has been honored with numerous awards and medals from prestigious institutions such as Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay Award, Gaurav Samman. These are just to name a few. Institute, but also other social organizations. So he's an active social worker. He's a founder president of Sankalp NGO. He's a secretary of Association for Human Rights and Environment. So I have just tried to brief our speaker to address the audience. The topic of today's address is overview of SA, and particularly he is going to talk about SA 200, SA 210, And is it
Thank you so much, Smita ji, for your lovely words in my introduction. And thanks to Chairman of Pune branch, a very dedicated and hardworking professional, very dear friend of mine, CS Amir Ladda ji. Thanks to all the participants who joins us today. So, with my warm greetings to every one of you who have connected us today on this virtual platform. Let us start with the discussion about standards on auditing. So, first, I would like to ask a question to every one of you, whether the standards on auditing are applicable on the assessees, I mean to say on the entities also, or these are applicable only on the chartered accountants. You can reply in the chat box. My another question is also, that is whether these standards on auditing are applicable on every chartered accountant, or these are applicable on those only who are providing auditing services to the large size entities like listed entity or large corporate houses. I request everyone to kindly engage yourself in the chat box. Instead of sharing your membership number for the CP purpose, your CP shall be already been taken. It shall be considered merely based on your active participation as per the report generated by Zoom itself. So yeah, I am getting some replies in the chat box. Let me see. Yes, applicable on all, on every chartered accountant, on everyone, all the members. Perfect. So in today's session, there will be a number of questions from my side, and I also expect that there should be a number of questions from your side as well. So as much as questions you will ask, I would be very much happy, because whenever we try to answer the questions asked by the participants, I believe that every time I learn something new, because there is a proverb in Sanskrit कि अपूर्व को अपि कोशो अयम विद्यते तो भारती व्ययतो वृद्धि मायाति क्षय मायाति संचयात. Whenever we try to share our knowledge with others, it always increases. But whenever we think to limit it with us, gradually it reduces. So to increase my own knowledge, I would be very much happy to discuss with you all the multiple dimensions relating to standards on auditing. First, we will cover the overview of all the standards on auditing, their background, the importance, and their classification, the various categories. Thereafter, we will cover three very much important essays, which can be said that like a base, like the foundation of all the standards on auditing, essay 200, 210, and 220. We will take questions simultaneously. I request you, don't wait for the end of the session. If you have any question in your mind, which is relating to the ongoing discussion, kindly ask in the chat box or in the Q&A section. So I would try to cover the questions simultaneously. So with the interlinking with the ongoing subject. So let me start with my presentation. Yes, I believe this is visible to every one of you. Yes, Smita ji, ma'am, please confirm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. So this is all about the background of essays. I have asked you the question that whether these are applicable on every chartered accountant. Sir, answer is here. Standards on auditing are mandatorily to be followed by every practicing chartered accountant. That means a chartered accountant who is not in practice is not required to follow SA. It does not say like this, but yes, every chartered accountant who is in practice, he should follow every standard on auditing which is applicable on the engagement. ICAI Central Council has already been issued such directions for our guidance. If we talk about the legal framework, the section 143 subsection 9 of Companies Act, it describes that every auditor has to comply with the auditing standards. And who can be appointed as an auditor? A practicing chartered accountant itself. So that means, as per the section 143 subsection 9 of Companies Act, again, such standards on auditing are applicable on every chartered accountant who is engaged in auditing function, assurance function. If we talk about Code of Ethics of ICAI, if any practicing chartered accountant fails to comply with the requirements of standards on auditing, he or she shall be held guilty for professional misconduct under Schedule 2 of Chartered Accountants Act. When you go through with the clause number 5, 6, 7 of Part 1 of Schedule 2, clause number 5, 6, 7 of Part 1 of Schedule 2 of revised Code of Ethics of ICAI, you will find that it is clearly mentioned over there, if chartered accountant in practice fails to report any material misstatement, then he or she shall be held guilty for professional misconduct. And when we discuss about the material misstatement, we have SA 315 for our guidance. It talks about material misstatements, identification of the risk of such material misstatements by understanding the business and environment of your client, as a 315 guides us. So that means if any of you is not following standards on auditing and you are in practice and engaged in assurance engagements, that means you have taken the ticket of lucky draw of professional misconduct. Anytime your lucky draw can be announced by ICAI. Let me give you some examples. And before that, I would like to ask a question to every one of you. I believe every practicing chartered accountant is involved in tax audits, right? All of you are involved in tax audits. So how many of you are there who obtains engagement letter for 100% tax audits? Kindly reply in the chat. How many of you are obtaining engagement letter for tax audits? Engagement letter for every tax audit. Let me see the chat box. Yes, we do. Thank you, Akashji. Thank you, Anand sir. Somebody else? Among hundreds of the participants, 5, 6. Anil sir, yes. Nalini ma'am, right. Nilesh sir, Dinesh sir, good answer. We have to ensure that we obtain engagement letter for every tax audit. Now one question comes in our mind. Dheeraj bhai, these standards on auditing are applicable on company audit as per Companies Act, like I mean to say statutory audit of corporates, or these are applicable on other assurance engagement as well? Let me clear this thing. These assays are applicable on every assurance engagement. That means for forensic audits, internal audits, GST audit, tax audit, any other audit. These are not only limited to the statutory audit, these are applicable on every assurance engagement. So if any kind of audit activities you are performing, before starting your assignment, you have to obtain the EL as a 210, agreeing the terms of audit engagement. As a 210 guides us about this. So if you are conducting tax audits, even without obtaining the engagement letter, that means again you are buying the ticket for the lucky draw of professional misconduct. You shall be held guilty for professional misconduct because due to violation of SA 210. Got it? Assays are applicable on every assurance engagement. Clear this thing. If you talk about the summary of all the assays, compositely we can say that assays are covered under engagement and quality control standards, EQCS. Collectively we can ask. People ask me, Dheeraj bhai, what is the importance of standards on auditing? We are in practice for years, for decades. We are doing tax audits because we are small, medium practitioners. We don't have any kind of company audit. So in tax audit, there is no such practice of obtaining engagement letter from our client. Even if we ask this question to our client, if we request them, sir, kindly sign this engagement letter for our tax audit, the client will laugh at you. Oh, what is going to happen this year? I am your client for years long. Till the date you have never demanded for such kind of engagement letter. Do you have doubt on me? My dear friends, at the initial stage, your client may ask you this question, but make it this thing very much clear in your mind that you have to obtain EL for every assurance engagement. That means in the current year, in the current situation, if you are doing audit under section 44 AB of Income Tax Act, for the assessees for the year ended as on 31st March 2021, you have to obtain EL from every assessee. People ask me the importance. Like in India, we have BSC, NSC, SEBI, all these things. So for the controlling of the listed entities, in US, there is an organization known as SEC, Security Exchange Commission. Years ago, this is an old report. Years ago, SEC has released one document, one report, and they mentioned that out of the entities against which SEC has taken the enforcement actions in relation to poor audit quality. That means the cases where SEC has taken action against auditors. They have listed the reasons of the action. And when they have listed the reasons of the actions, the 10 kind of audit deficiencies have been listed out by them. The first one is gathering sufficient audit evidence. In 80% of cases, auditors were held guilty for professional misconduct because of he failed to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidences. We have SA 500 and SA 501 to guide us about the audit evidence. But if we fail to obtain the sufficient audit evidence, enforcement action can be taken against the auditor. Also, we have SA 230, which will be covered tomorrow by C. Ravi Kumar Patwa sir from Assam. That is all about audit documentation. Sometimes what happens to us in case of tax audits, your client reaches you, approach you on 25th of September and request you, Anil sir, please finalize my tax audit report. And you say, dear, I have already burdened. I have a lot of pending files. No, sir, I'm your old client. You are providing the tax audit services to us for more than 10 years. And at the last moment, where I will go? No, sir, I will pay you 1 lakh rupees, but kindly conduct my tax audit. In the 5 days period, what you can do, you will just compile the Excel data and you will just fill it in the form 3CD as per the clause by clause required by form 3CD, and you will submit your report. Even the digital signature certificate of your client, it is also been used in your office from your own IP address. Sir, due to lack of time, you fails to obtain the sufficient audit evidences. You fails to do the proper documentation. As a 230 asks that we have to complete the audit file in all terms with the documentation within 60 days from the date of completion of the audit. If you fails to do this, again, disciplinary action can be initiated against you. Other reasons are like failing in the exercising the due professional care, as a 220 regarding audit quality, demonstrating appropriate level of professional skepticism, again as a 220 audit quality, interpreting or applying the requirements of GAAP. That means you are failing to comply with the requirements of accounting standards, which can be collectively called as a FRF, Financial Reporting Framework. Interpreting or applying the requirements of GAAP, and then thereafter the designing the audit program, audit planning. That means as a 300, 315 and 320. You fails to comply with these essay. So more or less we can say, because of lack of compliance or because of failure in the compliance in relation to standards on auditing, the auditors have been held guilty for professional misconduct. When we divide the standards on auditing, or we can say the engagement and quality control standards, we can divide into the 5 major parts, like SQCs for the quality control, then auditing review standards, then assurance engagements other than audit. like the financial statements, the unaudited financial statements, when we have to prepare for the 9 months. Other related services, we talk about these SRS, these are SAE, and other general clarifications issued by ICAI on time-to-time basis. These are various kind of EQCs. If we talk about serial number wise, we can list out among these serials. I'm not reading out this slide. We will share the slide with the Pune branch, so you can obtain from there. Talking about the structure of standards on auditing. First, the general principles and responsibilities have been mentioned among as starting from SA 200 to SA 299. This section talks about the guiding principles for every auditor, how he should start the audit, what kind of documentation he should do before obtaining the auditing, before starting the audit engagement. That means the documentation and guiding regarding engagement letter. After starting the audit, what kind of documentation is expected from an auditor? What are the responsibilities of auditor to report the fraud or errors in the financial statements? Also, we are not only the auditor for the financial data. SA 250 requires that we have to ensure that the compliance in relation to other important law and regulations have also been followed and complied while preparing the financial statements. Then it talks about the communication to the management. Our communication must be in proper manner and in complete manner. What happens to us? We have done the audit, and as of sudden, we submit our audit report and we mention that we have following observations or disclaimer, or we would like to issue a modified report or a qualified report, adverse report even. Then your client asks you, dear sir, you have not been discussed these things with me earlier. At least you should talk to me. There were sufficient clarifications about this. You have doubt about the internal controls, but we have our own internal control manual. And now we are saying, boss, your staff member has not provided all these things to me. We were not aware that there is a internal control manual is there or not. So this is responsibility of every auditor as per SA 260 to communicate the important points, important issues with the people who are charged with the governance. That means board of directors or audit committee or independent directors, as the case may be. And the communication must be in the proper manner. Boss, you love someone, and one fine morning you thought that today I will express my love to her. You keep your mobile in your hand. All of a sudden you receive a message from herself, and what was mentioned? I love. It was mentioned over there. Now we are very, very, very much happy. Yes, I was trying to express my love to her, but she herself sent this message to me. But all of a sudden, one thing came in your mind. Today is 15th August. Today is Independence Day. So what she is trying to mention, I love you, or I love my India, I love my country, I love Mother Earth, I love myself. Now, one question, one confusion has been created in your mind because of incomplete communication. So SA 260 guides us, and read with SA 700 series as well, 700, 705, 706, 710, this series as well, that our communication to the management before your report and at the time of providing your opinion on the financial statements, it must be clear, and the message must be clearly visible. The next series talks about the risk assessment and how an auditor is responding towards those assessed risks, starting from SA 300 to SA 450. This series, in this series, I want to highlight one thing. Many people have confusion about the scope of SA 315 and scope of SA 320. Many people have such confusion in their mind. Can anybody of you elaborate this? What message has been passed in SA 315 and how it is different from SA 320? I say Both are slightly different. One is Gora and another one is his brother Kala, Gora or Kala. As a 315, the heading is identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatements through understanding the entity and its environment. As a 320, the materiality in planning and performing an audit. So is there any difference in SA 315 and SA 320? Anybody? Both are interlinked. Yes, both are interlinked. But what is the difference? There is one question from anonymous attendee. SEC is working. Sir, this has been the data when the SEC has initiated the action against the auditors, and in India as well, the SEBI as complying with SEC's guidelines, complying in the similar manner or incidental manner with the SEC's requirement. Another thing, when we talk about SA 210, SA 200, SA 200 talks about the audit must be as per the international standards. Audit must be as per the international standards. And when we discuss about international standards, that's why I have given the example of SEC. Somebody has doubt that why the data of SEC has been discussed. Then somebody else in the chat box. One talks about misstatement, another talks about the materiality. Mandar sir, very good, sir, very good. Sir, as a 315, it talks about how a chartered accountant in practice, or I must say the auditor, he should proceed to identify the risk of material misstatement. That means the qualitative work that I have gone through with the entities, business environment and their control environment. And then I have listed out the control weaknesses, like I have to focus on the payroll particular area, or I have to focus on the purchase area, right? That means the identifying the risk of material misstatement, that in which particular segment, in which particular field, in which particular area, I have to focus more, because the possibility of material misstatement is higher in those areas because of lack of some controls or a lack of some adequate policies, whatever the reason may be, lack of the competent staff member as well to perform these duties. So 315 talks about identifying the risk area. Then 320, it talks about the quantitative approach. That means after identifying all these things, considering the turnover of the entity, you have decided that my PM, my performance materiality shall be rupees 2 lakh. That means while conducting my audit, while testing the samples, if any of sample in which I have observed something irregular, some irregularities, or I would like to highlight that the compliance has not been followed, but the size of such sample is less than 2 lakh, then on the ground of materiality, I can ignore that sample if number of such samples are not high. So as a 320 talks about the quantity, it talks about the performance materiality, it should be 1 lakh or 2 lakh or 3 lakh. But as a 315 talks about the overall risk of material misstatements, identifying the risk areas. And as a 330, it talks about how the auditor responded about those assessed risks. As per SA 315, we have listed out the risk areas in the payroll and purchase. But what we have done, even after identifying the risk areas, still our team members has conducted the audit for the payroll and purchase area as well, in the similar manner as they have conducted the audit in the casual approach for the revenue and fixed assets and all other areas. That means you have not complied with SA 330. Talking about next series, this is all about audit evidences. Already I have discussed that how much important SA 500 and 501 is. To obtain the audit evidence, some external confirmation also supports us. A very senior chartered accountant gave a statement that if auditor have complied with SA 505 in true manner, with true spirit, we would not have seen the Satyam case. In the foundation of failure of entire audit structure in the Satyam case, there was SF 505. Auditor failed to obtain the external confirmations. Nowadays, what happens to us? We went to the client for the audit purpose and we started to do the audit of bank. Our team member asked them for the bank balance, and client has submitted a printed report in the name of bank statement. The print has been taken in the client's office, and at the end of such printed statement, it is mentioned, this is being computer generated statement, no such signature and stamp is required. So now, merely based on such bank statement, we have relied. SF 505 talks that we have to ensure either we have to obtain the external confirmation directly from the bank, or we have to log in with the client on the with the net banking information, and we have to take the screenshot of that balance as well. Don't rely on the PDF files or the printed files as provided by the assessee without any stamp or signature from the banker. Similarly, we have to obtain the confirmation on sample basis from debtors and vendors. Many of my very close friends who are in revenue service, and when we discuss, though I am not in practice of taxation, but when we usually discuss what kind of material misstatement you find for the small medium enterprises in their tax audit, and they reply, Dheeraj, in most of the cases when the scrutiny has been made, it was found that the n number of vendors are bogus. That means the bogus purchase has been booked, bogus creditors has been created. So how we can identify that such a creditor is bogus or not? At least we have to perform for the external confirmations on sample basis. Later on, this section is talking about the sampling. Audit sampling will be covered tomorrow by CA Gyan Prakash Sharma sir, and it talks about the related parties, like we have AS 18 in relation to that for guidance of our subsequent events. Then going concern, it is also related to AS 28, impairment of assets and obtaining the representations. The next section is all about using the work of others. Can you please share me any of the example where you have used the share of others? Like using the work paper of internal auditor or using the work paper of joint auditor. It happens in the bank audit. CSA is not able to perform the audit for every branch. Then they rely on the SBA. They rely on the MOC filed by SBA. I have seen in my own experience for the last 11 years, many of the statutory auditors, big firms, good firms, they write a letter independently to the internal auditors. Dear sir, we are the statutory auditor of this particular entity and you are the internal auditor. So we are writing this in our professional capacity as a statutory auditor, that if you found any material misstatement or any of the risk area or any gray area during your audit, and you would like to share with us, kindly submit to us. Usually it happens when you are conducting your audit in the month of April. Unfortunately, the internal audit report has not been submitted. So in that case, what they do, they write such letter to the internal auditor to obtain their confirmation that is there any such kind of area where we have to focus more? Is there any such risk area? Using the work of another auditor or using the work of an auditor's expert, SA 620, example of actuarial evaluation. Sir, we are not able to perform the statistical calculation for the purpose of gratuity liability or the leave encashment liability. So what we do, we rely on the information provided by other auditors expert, that means the actuary, and we rely on that. This series will be discussed by Abhishek Jain sir day after tomorrow. This is all about forming an opinion and reporting as a 700 series. some essays which are dealing with the specialized areas. I am parking this. Standards on review engagement. Sometimes we get the appointment from the SSE, from the client. This is not for the audit purpose. This is for the review engagement. That means we have to do the review of financial statements. So in those particular cases, SF 2400 and 2410 is there to guide us. In chat box, okay, only membership. When you share your membership number in chat box, I get confused. I see there may be some questions. These are the essays which are guiding the assurance engagements other than audit. The series is 3400. There are 3 such essays are there to guide us. Standards on related services. Like means the SF 4400, it deals about the engagements to perform on the particular procedures regarding the financial information. Engagement to compile the financial information. Sometimes audit client appoints you not to do audit, just merely compile my financial information, my financial statements for the purpose of bank loan. Then what we do, we just provide the financial statements and we sign at the bottom for firm's name. Then we sign and mark our membership number and date. Dear friends, it resembles like you have done the audit and you have provided your order. These statements are audited statements. SRS 4410 guides us. In such cases, you have to mention that we have not performed the audit. We have just compiled the financial information is provided by the client. Now, this was all about the background of the entire essays. So we will be able to learn tomorrow and after tomorrow as well in detail with some specific standards on auditing. 4 essays are to be covered day after tomorrow and 3 essays are to be covered tomorrow and 3 essays I am going to cover today. So total 10 essays, very important and foundation essays we are going to cover in this series. Talking about today's first essay, essay 200, that talks about the overall objective of an independent auditor. It doesn't specify the statutory auditor or tax auditor. It clearly mentioned the independent auditor and guide how to conduct an audit in accordance with standards on auditing. And especially it mentions about the international standards on auditing. When I summarize the entire essay 200 or when I summarize the objective of the audit, the summary is in the single slide. Can you please read out from yourself? The ultimate purpose, ultimate objective of any audit is nothing but to obtain the reasonable assurance. That means the assurance obtained by an auditor must be reasonable, and the reasonable assurance can only be obtained with the help of sufficient appropriate audit evidence as per SA 500 and 501. And it must be documented as per SA 230. That reasonable assurance about what? That the financial statements as a whole. Sometimes many people ask me the question. There is why I have gone through with the entire audit process and we have done the audit of financial statements of XYZ Private Limited. But what we have observed that every area has been, the accounting function has been followed in a very proper manner. But in the purchase area, we found the material misstatements. In the purchase area, we found that there is no such policy of maker-checker concept. There is no such policy of 3 quotations. There are no effective controls are over there. So purchase area is really very much weak. But rest all the areas are in all the other areas, the internal controls are strong and everything is very well managed. So can we ignore that particular small area of purchase? Sir, as a 200 talks about, that means financial statements as a whole. Even in the single area, in the small area, you find Any material misstatement you have to report. You cannot ignore it. And what that it is free from material misstatement. What do you mean by material misstatement? That means the deviation from the applicable gaps, applicable FRFs, accounting standard, or Ind AS or IFRS, whichever is applicable on your assessee. The gap from such applicable financial reporting framework is material, impacting the financial statements in material manner. And the impact is disabling the stakeholders to understand the true and fair view of the financial statements. That means this is material misstatement. To guide about this, we have SA 315. Such misstatement may be because of any fraud, any error. If such mistake is intentional, then it is called as fraud. If such mistake is unintentional, then this is called error. So you cannot ignore the errors as well. And that based on such observation and after obtaining such reasonable assurance, you have to express your opinion that the financial statements are prepared in all the material respects and in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. What do you mean by applicable FRF? Anybody want to tell this? What do you mean by applicable FRF? Anybody wants to reply in the chat box? Applicable FRF. Sir, applicable financial reporting standards are nothing but your accounting standards or your Ind AS, is the case may be in India. If you are performing audit for the foreign reporting purpose, then it may be IFRS or US GAAP as well. But more or less, we would talk about AS and Ind AS. So when we talk about AS, I would like to invite your kind attention. Thank you, Anil sir, Mandar sir, Akash sir, for your answer. Right. I would like to invite the kind attention of every one of you that accounting standards are applicable on non-company entities as well. If you are doing tax audit of any proprietorship firm, Akash ji is an auditor of a proprietorship firm or an or a HUF or a partnership firm. He is performing tax audit under Section 44 AB of Income Tax Act. Then also he has to ensure that the financial statements, the tax accounts have been prepared as per the accounting standards. And this rule is not new. In the year 2004, this is the background of AS for non-company entities. In the year 2004, ICAI has notified that the accounting standards are applicable on non-company assessees also, non-company entities also, and ICAI has divided such non-company entities in the 3 levels, level 1, 2, and 3, for the purpose of applicability of particular accounting standard. But in the year 2020, Government of India has revised the threshold for micro, small, and medium enterprises as per MSMED Act. So to comply with such revision in the threshold, even I was also part of ICAI's that particular meeting in which it was discussed that how ICAI should redefine the new levels, new classification criteria for non-company entities for the purpose of applicability of accounting standard. So we have discussed about the revised threshold as well. So based on that, ICAI come out with an announcement in March 2021 with the revised classification criteria for levels of non-company entities. Now we have 4 levels: 1, 2, 3, and 4. Micro, small, medium, and large entities. So when we talk about large entities which are having their turnover more than 250 crore and borrowings more than 50 crore, or who entities for which the shares have already been listed, or the entities in the process to list their shares in any of the stock exchange, or the entity which is holding or subsidiary of such large entity, for all those entities, all 27 AS are applicable. Sir, AS are 29 or 27 or 32? Let me clear you. AS 6 and AS 8 has been withdrawn. So out of 29 AS, there are only 27 AS. Some people talks about AS 30, 31, 32. These AS has never been notified. There are only 27 AS starting from AS1 ending at AS29, which are notified by MCA. So all 27 AS are applicable for level 1 entities, and for level 2, 3, 4 entities, there is a separate guidelines, separate classification criteria, and separate rules for the applicability of individual AS. That is matter of different session. But why I have highlighted this thing, because what happens to us while doing any of the audit other than company audit, we ignore the compliance of essays, and also we ignore the compliance of accounting standards. We say that this is a small client. They have the turnover of 3 crore rupees only. A proprietorship concern, there are only 4 staff over there. So is it really required to prepare their financial statements as per the accounting standards? And especially the compliance of AS 11, AS 13. These AS are to be considered a little bit difficult or a little bit tough or complex. Yes, sir, these are applicable, though some certain exemptions in relation to disclosure criteria, disclosure requirements have been provided, but still we have to check this. And based on that, you have to report, you have to form your opinion for the report. This is the essence, this is the soul, this is the summary of SA 200. Yes, Mandar sir, reporting framework will also include disclosures as per the Companies Act, LODR. Yes, absolutely. When there is like for banking and for anything else, specific requirements as per any of the legal statute, if these are required, that means we have to follow that the compliance for all these have been made by the SSC. The scope of audit, that means it is not about only reporting your opinion merely based on the financial statements, but also your scope includes the business environment, the controls, efficiency and effectiveness of the controls, and your scope also includes the going concern, the compliance of provisions, going concern, accrual. That means it talks about other assurance as well. As a 200 guides us about this. While preparing financial statements, this is the duty of management to prepare the financial statements as per applicable FRF. This is the responsibility of management. Then what is the responsibility of auditor? To ensure that they have prepared the financial statements as per accounting standards or any other applicable FRF. If management failed to do so, this is the responsibility of auditor to highlight these things. SA 200 also talks about various other aspects which are to be considered by an auditor during the audit. Sir, there are some ethical requirements. When we talk about code of ethics, when we talk about the professional misconducts, when we talk about the fundamental principles of code of ethics, sir, there are 5 fundamental principles are over there: integrity, objectivity, professional competence, confidentiality, and professional behavior. That means the responsibility of auditor is not merely limited or restricted towards the audit of financial statements and merely checking that whether these have been prepared as per the applicable financial reporting framework or not. Auditor has to ensure that himself or his team members have fulfilled the fundamental principle of integrity while performing their duties. And what is integrity? Your own honesty, pramanikta, that is your integrity. Merely because of our integrity only, our signature has the value. There must be the objectivity as well. As SA 200 talks about this, the objectivity guides us that our audit plan, audit activities, and the entire procedure should be in such a manner that it has not been deviated from the ultimate purpose of the audit. And what is the ultimate purpose of the audit? I already shared in 2 slides ago. Then the professional competence and due care. I believe every chartered accountant always try to follow and ensure the professional competence and the due care. I believe, am I right? no chartered accountant always willfully do any kind of default. This is my personal opinion. But still, what happens that ICI takes the action against chartered accountants in practice for negligence in their duties, for the reason that they have not been performed their duties with the professional competence and due diligence. There are two major reasons I have observed. The one is time constraint and another one is fees constraint. What happens to us? On 28th of September, one client approaches Nalini madam and requests her, hey, madam, kindly do our tax audit. And madam is busy, but client is paying good fees, handsome amount for the fees. So madam could not deny himself. And madam said, okay, sir, no problem. We will do your tax audit. But ma'am have only 2 days. And entire team of office of Nalini madam is already busy in other tax audits. So what will happen? They have to compromise in terms of the audit evidences. They have to compromise in terms of the quality. They have to compromise in terms of the documentation. So in that case, such principle has not been fulfilled and SA 200 has not been fulfilled. Another example, one client came to Mandar sir and requested him, boss, kindly do our tax audit. And client approached on 15th of August. That means we have still 46 days in the due date. But the fees is only 10,000 for the tax audit. What will happen? Mandar sir and his team members, they will focus more on the clients who are paying 50,000, 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 3 lakh, and they will give very, I must say, nominal time to this particular client. He is paying 10,000 rupees only. And when I say ask to Mandar sir, boss, why you have not obtained the sufficient evidences? He will reply, sir, fees was only 10,000. Kya kya karta 10,000 mein? Because of insufficient fees, he has compromised with his duties. But this is not the reply or the answer. It cannot convince the ICI's disciplinary committee. So all these ethical requirements have been covered as per SA 200. Other than those, like if you obtain any kind of such audit evidence and you document it in your file, and this is still contradictory towards the sufficient and appropriate audit evidences, and merely based on such evidence you have performed your audit and you have given your opinion, then that shall not be accepted. All these other requirements you can read out yourself. I will share the PPT. Now the important thing is professional judgment. Yes, again it happens when issue is relating to the computability. Then it happens time, nature, and the extent of the audit. In these cases, your professional judgment, it hampers. In these cases, your quality of your audit, it hampers. So ensure that before starting any of the audit engagement, first check about the nature, then the time and the extent of the audit procedure. Then only you can decide that sufficient and appropriate evidences for this audit purpose can be listed out, and then only you will be able to take the decisions as per the circumstances of your particular client. My approach for the audit for client A may be different, and my approach for the audit for the client B may be different. Though the turnover is similar, profit is similar, both are working in the same industry, both are having their factories in the same industrial area, nature, size, everything is similar, still my approach may be different just because of difference in their control environment, just because difference in their internal environment. Moving ahead, SA 200 also talks about the sufficient audit evidence. But when I talk about sufficient audit evidence, that means there must be the sufficiency. That means the quantum. Quantum means there are 1,000 line items in legal and professional expenses, and the amount is 20 lakh. The amount is 20 CR. I have tested only 2 samples, and the total of those samples is 4 lakh only. That means these audited evidences may be appropriate, but these are not sufficient. The sufficiency refers to the quantum. Then appropriateness, it refers to the quality. I have tested 2 such samples, and both of the samples are relating to the provisions at the month end. On 31st of August, SSC has taken the provision, and on 1st of September, they have reversed. That means I have checked nothing. The provision has been taken at the month end, and on the very first day of the next month, provision has been reversed. That means my sample is not appropriate as well. And we have to ensure that purpose of obtaining such evidences is to ensure to reduce the risk of audit up to the level which can be accepted by any of the other authority as well. There are some inherent limitations also while performing an audit. The first one is nature of the financial reporting. It really involves your judgment. Nature of reporting means there may be the quarterly reporting, there may be the limited review, there may be the tax audits. That means for the financial accounts, there may be your global reporting as per IFRS. There may be your 6 monthly audit. There may be the audit for the purpose of other institutions. There may be the audit as per under any other law. There may be the audit of bank audit. So the nature of the financial reporting, it is playing the key role. The nature of the audit procedures, what particular audit procedure you have followed. The audit procedure we can discuss in SA 300 and 315, mainly in SA 300. The balance between the benefit and cost, this is really very much important, because in the reasonable period you have to provide the report. Sir, financial year has been ended as on 31st March. You have done the audit in September. In these 6 months, the relevance of your audit data has fallen, because accounting profession is only for the accountable people. So our accountability should not be degraded. Kindly insist your clients not to run away for the audit in the September month itself. What happens to us? Up to July month, we are free. And in the month of August and September, we have the burden. So insist your clients to get their accounts audited in the month of April, May, and June itself. So it is also important, though many of such representation have been issued to government, that the time period for the AGM should be reduced. If any company is reporting in the month of September, the relevance of such audit report decreases. The time, perform all the procedures within the limited time frame. Sometimes we have seen that some clients, they request to ROC for the extension for the AGM. Why? Because their audit has not been conducted within the stipulated time period. Let's suppose you are doing audit for a listed entity and you have to report in the May month itself. Client has decided their board meeting on the 8th of the May. If you fail to complete your audit before that day, then again, you are failing to comply with SA 200. Moving ahead, SA 210, is there any question in anyone's mind relating to SA 200? Any question in anyone's mind relating to SA 200? Let me see the chat box. No. Okay, Akash, thank you. You can ask the question at any point of time. Now moving ahead towards SA 210, agreeing the terms of engagement. And another important essay. The overview of SA 210 is, this particular essay deals about the auditor's responsibilities. In what? In agreeing the terms of audit engagement with the management. So what is the requirement as per SA 210? That there should be an agreement between both the parties, whether it is new audit engagement or it is recurring audit engagement as well. There must be a confirmation. There must be an agreement, and such agreement, such confirmation is called as engagement letter. That means you have to obtain the engagement letter for every assurance engagement, every audit, for tax audits as well. Please start to follow this policy. from today itself. And what does it establishes? Certain preconditions for an audit, and also it talks about the responsibilities which are on the head of the management. What is the responsibility of auditor? Sir, the responsibility of the auditor is nothing but to create a audit plan SA 300 and then execute that plan by collecting the applicable supporting evidences as a 500, 501 and as a 230. Also we can talk about as a 530 sampling to make a determination or opinion. That means as a 700 series, whether or not the financial statements are free from material misstatement as a 315. This is the ultimate responsibility of an auditor. And as per the audit engagement, such responsibility should be clearly visible, should be identified among the management and auditor. Yeah, one question which comes in the mind of many of the people when we talk about as a 210 and when we talk about the preconditions, there should be certain preconditions. Even last month, I was having a session in which additional deputy CSG of India, Sangeeta madam was also there. So ma'am asked this question to me. Dheeraj, you was talking about preconditions for audit, that auditor must clear the existence of such preconditions with the auditee. What do you mean by such preconditions? Because in every audit, when we are doing audit of the company, our scope is already been fixed. Sir, this question comes in our mind when we talk about only the company audit. But my dear friends, as a 210 is not only limited to the company audit, it applies on the forensic audit as well. GST audit, tax audit, internal audit, proprietary audit, management audit, cost audit, even your performance audit. So that's why scope of your audit may be deviated for every different assignment. So that's why such preconditions must be over there. If such preconditions are there, then you can accept or you can continue an existing audit engagement. If you find that such preconditions are not there, then talk to your client and ensure that such preconditions must be over there. And there must be some common understandings between auditor and management. So my question to you, can you please list out 3-4 such preconditions? When we talk about obtaining the engagement letter, and as a 210 guides us that you should obtain the engagement letter only after ensuring that such preconditions are in existence. Anybody want to answer? If your answer will be wrong, nobody will be punished. I promise. किसी को मुर्गा नहीं बनाएंगे. I promise. You can reply in the personal chat as well about internal controls. Yes, sir. Somebody else? Some more such preconditions? When we understand the environment of and business of the entity as per as a 315, we focus on internal controls in very extensive manner at that time. Sir, the preconditions are scope should be clear. Some other conditions like we talk about mutual understanding about what? The limitations, fees, payment terms, purpose, documentation, confidentiality. That means the various clauses of engagement letters. First thing is that. Another thing, the next important precondition is the management should agree that the responsibility of preparation of financial statements as per applicable financial reporting framework is of the management. That means unless your management is not agree that this is their responsibility to prepare the financial statements as per the accounting standards, you should not start the audit. This is the responsibility of management, and management must be agree on this. This is the preconditions. Third precondition, the auditor should be clear in his mind that he have to prepare a plan and then execute that plan as per this. So these are the preconditions as per SA 210. One fine morning, somebody came to Jagdish sir, a very reputed, a very powerful, and a very rich client, a big bull of real estate industry in Pune. One fine morning, Jagdish sir received a call from the PA of the owner of ABC Infrastructure Limited, and he called him, Jagdish sir, our boss would like to appoint you as our company auditor for the next 5 years. Now Jagdish sir is very much happy. Yes, the fees will surely be more than 20 lakh rupees. Ganga Naliye, the big bull of real estate industry, infra industry of Pune is now going to be my client. He's very much happy. So they have fixed that we will do our audit. We will arrange our meeting on 2nd of August with our MD, and we will appoint you. Jagdish sir is very much happy. One fine morning on the 1st August, he is just going through with the newspaper, and suddenly there was a big news highlighted in the newspaper. The enforcement department booked Mr. Ramesh, director of ABC Infra Limited, for money laundering and for other issues. He found such news that the income tax department raided at the various locations of ABC Infra, and they found the property more than their income. I said Sampatti. He found such kind of adverse news, negative news. Now, Jagdish sir, should you accept the engagement of ABC Infra on 2nd of August? The accountant called you, sir, another director is ready to do meeting with you, and we will immediately start our audit. Will you do this? Yes, Jagdish sir, yes or no? Or somebody else? If you get such news about your prospective client, will you do this? Sir, I said 210. Answer is no, no, yes, sir. 6-7 people answers no. Thank you so much. Sir, as per as a 210, you have to evaluate the integrity of management as well. Though the client is an alcoholic, he is short-tempered, he has dispute with his life partner. These are the different things. These are the different things. You can ignore their personal life. But when the question is all about their integrity, question is all about the compliance with the legal requirements, then you should not accept the engagement as per as a 210. The second step, identify the special circumstances. What do you mean by such special situations, special conditions? Sir, I was the auditor of ABC Infra. I was appointed in the year 2018. In the year 2021, all of a sudden, in the July month, I resigns. Even without completing the audit for the year ended as on 31st March 2021, I suddenly resigns, and the client is in search of new auditor. And client approached Gayatri madam, ma'am, kindly do our audit. Mr. Dheeraj Sharma has resigned. There are no other such reason, no issue with the integrity of the management as far as the information is available in the public domain. The fees is 50 lakh rupees. ABC Infra is very rich and powerful client in Pune in infra industry. So Gayatri madam, should you accept the engagement? First, you have to check with the special circumstances why the existing auditor has resigned even before completion of his tenure. This is called as special circumstances. You have to check. There may be the reason I have died. Now you can accept the engagement. There may be the reason I have surrendered my COP. That happens in actual. As on date, I am not a practicing chartered accountant. In January 2021, I have surrendered my COP. I am not in practice. So there may be this reason as well. There may be some other reasons, but at least you should identify such reasons, and thereafter only you should give your consent to become an auditor. The third thing, you have to check the competence to perform the audit. Sir, the client came to you in the month of September, and you know the entire team is to be deputed for the audit of ABC Infra for at least 15 days. Audit fees is 50 lakh rupees. But fortunately or unfortunately, your entire team has already been deputed on other assignments, and you know very well that such team shall not be free to start the audit of ABC Infra before 20th of September, and 30th September is the due date of their AGM. That means at that point of time, you are not competent to perform that audit. So first you have to check whether I can immediately hire new team members, I can manage such team, or some specific technical expertise required in the audit of ABC Infra. But unfortunately in your team, none of the team member is expert for those matters. So you have to hire such person in your team. That means check the competence to perform the audit. Even without checking the competence, merely just man mein laddu phuta after looking at the fees of 50 lakh rupees, you should not start the audit. Then evaluate the independence as well. Very important concept as per SA 210. Sir, how to evaluate the independence? In the non-company client, sir, in the company client, we can check the independence by that I am having shareholding in that company or not. But for the non-company entities, can we check the independence? No, we cannot check the independence. People are answering no, no, no. Sir, can we check the independence in the non-company entity? One client approached Gitanjali madam for tax audit, and the client is a partnership firm. So ma'am, how you can evaluate the independence, yours and your teams? Let me give you an example how the independence can be compromised for the non-company entities. Gitanjali madam is engagement partner, and Dheeraj Sharma is working in his team, in her team as a audit manager. But I am the only person, I am the only manager in her team, and there are 4 articles who are reporting to me. So ma'am want to appoint V5 people on the audit of ABC Infra Partnership Firm. Ma'am, the independence is compromised in the term that my family business is also in the infra. Let's suppose in real there is no such business in my family, but let's suppose my family is engaged in the infra business itself, and the business is 80% dependent on the ABC Infra, and I am involved in my family business as well. That means I have my personal interest in ABC Infra. I don't have shareholding in ABC Infra because that is partnership firm, but I have my personal interest in ABC Infra because of my family business. That means Gitanjali madam should not assign myself on the engagement of tax audit of ABC Infra. This is called the evaluation of independence. That means all your team members are free from any kind of such independence issue. Another thing is the ability to use due care. Yes, sometimes, as I already discussed, sometimes we need to apply some specific expert knowledge or tools. So whether we have such tools with us. When I was an article, I was not sent to the bank branch where my father was working. Yes, Gitanjali ma'am, absolutely correct. This is the example of evaluating the independence as per SA 210. I appreciate your principal as well, who followed the SA 210 in the true spirit. Excellent. Then prepare the engagement letter. That means before preparing the engagement letter, you have to check these 5 stages. Then only you can enter into the engagement letter. Now you are coming on the agreeing on the terms of audit engagement. If this is your first time engagement, first time the SSC want to appoint you as an auditor, so whether such limitations have been imposed by the client on your what? Boss, you are our statutory auditor. But for payroll purpose, we have our another consultant, so we would not be able to share any of our information in the name of confidentiality with you. Sometimes I have seen, even when I was working with one of the big four around 10 years ago, at that time also some of our clients, they refuse to provide the data of payroll in the name of confidentiality. They say, sir, we also don't have the access of the payroll information. We have the third party, that is another big four, maintaining our payroll. And the information is accessed by only the HR head, finance director, and the managing director. Only the three people have access on the information relating to the payroll. So we will not be able to share such information to you. You should accept such engagement or not? My question to you. The logic is true. How the accounts manager can share you the data relating to the payroll if he also don't have the access to such information? So should you accept the engagement? Yes or no? Anybody wants to answer in the chat box? No. Yes, Santosh sir. Anybody else? Yes, we should accept the engagement. Akashji, okay. Someone else? Please share your thoughts. And we are not conducting any kind of test that how much marks will be awarded to you. No such mark sheet shall be published. Vishakhaji replied, no. Sir, if any limitation is imposed on your scope of audit, that means it's hurting to the independence of your audit, quality of your audit, and you should not accept such engagement. It is clearly mentioned in SA 210. Remember one sentence: if any such limitation is imposed by the management on your work or your accessibility to the work, and such limitation is affecting the quality of your audit, you should not accept such engagement. You have to talk with the management that please, the preconditions which we have discussed in the 2-3 slides earlier are in existence, and there is no such limitation imposed by the management. Then you should accept the audit. If there is no limitation but there are no such preconditions as well, then discuss the matter and accept the engagement only after agreeing that there are such preconditions as we have discussed are in existence. Let me give you another example, because some people replied yes in response to my question. So I believe I should cover one more example to clarify this thing. Sir, when your client is not in possession of any particular information, and such information has been informed to you even before accepting the audit engagement, in such case, you have to ask your client, sir, yes, boss, we will enter into an agreement for the confidentiality of your payroll information. Such information on the sample basis shall be shared by the third party vendor which is maintaining your payroll records to our manager only, and only the single person, our manager, and another person, that is our engagement partner. Only these two people will have access of such information. If there will be any doubt, there will be any observation, such observation shall be discussed with your HR head, your finance director, and your managing director only. We will not share such information with any other person other than those whose name have been mentioned in the confidentiality agreement. You can enter such into such confidential agreement, but if client disagrees still to provide you the information, in any case, you should not accept such engagement. Now, my another example: at the time of starting your audit engagement, there was no such limitation discussed by your client. During the audit, your client asked to you, Gitanjali madam, we are not able to provide the information relating to payroll because of so and so reason. Now what you should do? Yes, Akash, you can do the additional confidentiality agreement. Even this is company audit, then there is no need of such agreement itself. If any limitation has been imposed on you, straight away denied to accept the engagement. Such confidentiality agreement is for other than company audit, like for your internal audit, proprietary audit, management audit, forensic audit, or any other audit. In company audit, even there is no need of such confidentiality agreement. If client is not providing you to access of all the information, straight away denied to obtain such a engagement. Now question is different, Akashji. At initial stage, client said, yes, I will provide you everything. You have started the audit. Even you have conducted the 75% audit. Then thereafter, client told you, we are not able to provide you the information related to our payroll. Now what you should do? You should resign from the engagement. Yes or no? What you should do? Please answer. In the mid of the audit, you got to know that immediately communicate with SC audit committee, the board, and the people who are charged with the governance. Yes, Anil sir, right. Another thing, qualify the audit report. Yes, sir. Is there anyone who says that you should resign from the engagement? Sir, if such limitation is material, too much material, and even giving the disclosure or providing the qualified report is not sufficient, that you know the profit reported by the entity is 100 crore, but if I will not have the access to such information, it may impact 80 crores. That means if I will report the profit 100 crore and I will mention that I will give the qualified report or I will mention the disclaimer, then it is also insufficient. Then in that case, you have to resign. But if you think that the qualification or the disclaimer is sufficient, then you must qualify the report or you must give the disclaimer. But before coming at the opinion, forming your opinion to give the qualified report, you should inform those charged with the governance, as very well mentioned by you, sir, that you have to discuss with the audit committee, independent directors, and the people who are charged with the governance. Then this is the matter. Is there any solution in your hand? If still client is not providing the solution, then you should go for the option of qualified report. Gitanjali ji mentioned that I had resigned as the opening balance sheet was faulty. Some asset not mentioned, unable to give opinion. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely, in such conditions, we have to resign. Now, when I talk about resignation, many of my dear friends talk to me, Dheeraj bhai, you have surrendered your COP. Maybe you have enjoyed the practice or you may not have been enjoyed your practice. But in practice, being a small, medium practice now, if we will start to resign from the engagements, how we will survive? My dear friends, if you will compromise with the quality in the name of survival, believe my words, it is surely going to harm you in the long term. It is always better to resign from the client to earn less amount in comparison to stand in the witness box or in the culprit box in disciplinary committee of ICAI. You spent your 4 or 5 years of your youth is Zawani lagai aapne. Then thereafter you became chartered accountant. You became the member of such a prestigious institution. Even your name can be changed, surname can be changed, but 2 letters before your name, neither it can be copied, neither it can be tapped. It will continue with you zindagi ke saath bhi, zindagi ke baad bhi. And now because of any of such silly mistake, ICAI sends you the love letter. Why we should not hold you guilty for the professional misconduct? Then it's in such condition, you will realize that the money is not more important than my qualification, my prestige, my degree. Yes, Akash ji, agree. So I always advise you, kindly ignore such clients, resign from such clients. If we don't resign, one member will survive, but the professional will not survive. Yes, Anil sir, Kulkarni sahab, excellent reply. If we will not resign on that day, we can survive for the time being purpose, for the time being only, but our profession will hamper. Excellent answer, sir. Sir, in case of recurring audit, we have discussed about the first time engagement. In case of recurring audit, before starting the engagement for another time, every time we have to recheck that Is there any revision in the audit term? If there is any revision, then consider it as a new engagement. If there is no revision, then also it is our duty to remind our client about the existing terms. Sir, this was our fees, these were the payment terms, this was the objective, these were the conditions about documentation, limitation, confidentiality, time frame, everything. Sometimes during the audit, management requests to do the changes in the terms. It usually don't happen in the company audit. It happens also, it doesn't happen in the tax audit. It happens in the forensic audit, internal audit, proprietary audit, in all those audits. Yes, Akashi, recurring engagement letter, we have to obtain the confirmation for every year. If during the audit, management requests you to change the terms, now you have to determine that the effect of such changes are justifiable or not. If you are satisfied, just no problem. Even after changing the terms of engagement as well, I can give justification. I can give the justification to my duties. Then record the new terms in the audit engagement letter and start the audit. But if you are not satisfied, don't accept the changes. Let me give you an example in a very practical manner. You have started the audit for the forensic purpose, for the fraud happened in your client. But one fine morning in the middle of the audit, like it happens in the Talwar case, if you go through with the Talwar movie, Ramesh Talwar, Arushi Talwar case, the CBI reached at one level in the first inquiry. Now they have started their inquiry from the another level and another at the next level, and both the opinions were contradictory. So CBI closed the matter saying that we have reached at the dead end. So similarly, in your client, in your engagement as well, in your forensic audit as well, you have reached at one point, one opinion, but at that time, your client denied to provide you access to some information or denied to give some information for the forensic test, and client is not supporting and client is requesting to change your audit methodology. Client is saying, boss, we will not allow you to do the third degree interview of our directors. We will not allow you to access the personal email of our directors in the name of confidentiality, in the name of their prestige. So now you come to know that, or you can determine that such limitation is affecting the quality of my forensic audit, and I'm not satisfied with such limitations. So I should not accept such limit, and I should resign from the assignment in between as well. Sir, when the changes in the terms of audit engagement can be allowed? Number one, when there is such indication that entity misunderstood the scope of the audit, like you are doing the forensic audit and the entity, the management told you, boss, we were not thinking that you will do such rigorous forensic audit. Kindly revise your terms. That means there are some misunderstanding towards the objective and scope of the audit. Then terms of engagement can be revised. It can be revised when some additional terms, additional scope of work client would like to impose in your current engagement with some additional fees. It can be revised when the significant change in the senior management. Let me give you an example. It doesn't happen in tax audit and company audit. It happens in internal audit, management audit, proprietary audit, forensic audit. Like you are doing the special audit of purchase area. In the middle of the audit, the purchase director, managing director, purchase head, these people have resigned. And such engagement was recommended by the purchase head, approved by the purchase director, and signed by the managing director. Now the new MD, new purchase head, new purchase director, they request you, Gitanjali madam, we don't think that we should continue with this engagement, or we should change the scope of this engagement. In that case also, terms of audit engagement can be changed. In case of significant change in the ownership, yes, it can be changed when the 90% shareholding has been changed. Significant change in the nature and size of the entity's business. Yes, sir. This thing happens in state audit and tax audit as well. Let's suppose when you started your audit, there were no such controls in the first year. In the next year, you are supposed to be reappointed because your appointment was for the 5 years. In the next year, you found that the turnover increased by 100 times. Team members increased by 20 times. There are significant changes in the nature and size of the business. So you have to redefine the terms of engagement in terms of documentation, in terms of your fees, in terms of other terms as well. When the changes in the legal requirements, yes, there may be the requirement of bank that this time while performing the statutory bank branch audit, we have to focus on these areas. The format of what do you say, that particular document, LFR, long form audit report, LFRA, LFR, yes, LFR, long form audit report has been changed by RBI. So in those cases, your terms has automatically changed. When change in the financial reporting framework adopted, yes sir, you are a statutory auditor of ABC Infra Limited. Till the last year, they were following accounting standards, but now they have switched to the Ind AS. So again, you have to change your audit engagement terms there as well. Where there is a change in the reporting requirement, like let me give you an example of the sugar industry. Mainly what happens in the sugar industry, they had their financial year for the purpose of statutory audit starting from 1st October to 30th September for the many years. But as per the requirement of New Companies Act 2013, they have to change their reporting period. Then also your terms of engagement can be changed. Agree till now? LFAR in statutory audit of bank. Yes, sir, LFAR. Though I am not engaged in bank audit, so I forget that name. Thank you, Akash, sir. LFAR. Long form audit report. Right. Now I have some questions to test your knowledge. Yes. Test number 1. SA 210 deals with the key considerations that an independent auditor needs to keep in the mind when deciding the terms of audit engagement with the management, or defining the requirements with the management, or deciding the roadmap designed by the management, or the precondition of the management. SA 210 deals with. One answer, A, Priyanka ji. Somebody else? Boss, everybody should answer. At least 10-20 answers should be there. Then only we will move for the next essay. A. Everybody is answering A. Yes, correct answer is terms of engagement. SA 210 deals with terms of engagement. No, sir, D is not the answer. Terms of engagement is the better answer than D. Second question. The interest of the entity and the auditor, in the interest of the entity and the auditor sends the document before the commencement of the audit to avoid the misunderstanding about the terms of the audit. This document is called DDD, audit engagement letter. Yes, sir. Before starting the audit, that is the audit engagement letter. Some people may get confused about the terms of engagement. The terms of engagement are mentioned in the document, and that document is known as audit engagement letter. Correct answer is D. Another question. ABC company was appointed as joint auditor where XYZ and company was an existing auditor. In order to expedite the audit process, that means to speed up the audit process, the condition may lead XYZ company to withdraw the audit assignment. Can XYZ Limited is required to withdraw the assignment? Let's suppose XYZ Limited was the existing auditor. In between the audit process, management has appointed ABC Limited as well, ABC and company as well. Okay, boss, we have the limited time and we would like to get our audit completed. So kindly to expedite the audit process, we are involved ABC and company now. So should they withdraw? No. Should they give the modified report? No. Should they continue the audit assignment without even new engagement letter? Yes, sir, they should continue audit assignment without even the new engagement letter, but they have to revise the terms of audit. Answer is B, correct. when the auditor requests the auditor to change the terms of audit engagement, auditor should consider whether the change terms provide what the change term provides about the assurance. The level of assurance, sir, acceptable level of assurance. Higher or optimal is the different thing. Such change term should be providing the acceptable level of assurance. Thank you so much for correct answers. That means you people are really carefully listening to these essays and you have the good knowledge about essays as well, even before this session also. Last question from essay 210, then thereafter we will move for essay 220. We have 22 minutes left. Which of the following statement is incorrect considering the context of revision in audit terms? Okay, already people have answered. Sir, indication that the entity has misunderstood. Yes, sir. In this case, we have to change the terms as we have discussed the reason of the changes when entity has misunderstood the objective. A significant change in the ownership of the auditee. Yes. A change in the legal or regulatory framework. Yes. Significant change in the audit team. Okay. Vishakha ji was appointed as auditor of ABC Infra Limited. Akshay sir, Akash sir, and Gayatri madam are team members in Vishakha madam. And in between the audit, Akshay sir, Akash sir, and Gayatri madam, all of them have resigned. Now nobody is in the team of Vishakha ma'am. Madam has to hire new chartered accountant like me, a very junior person to Gayatri madam and all. So in this case, can Vishakha madam request the client to change in the audit terms? Boss, there may be the change in 100% of, not significant, 100% of audit team except the engagement partner. Then also the terms of audit shall not be revised. So correct answer is D. Absolutely. Thank you to everyone for your correct answer. Now moving ahead for essay 220. If there is any question in your mind relating to the background of essay 210 or essay 220, essay 200, please ask the question. We are moving for essay 220, the quality control for an audit of financial statements. Sir, there are 5 key skills or 5 key points have been described in essay 220 in relation to the quality control. The first one is leadership responsibilities. If Vishakha ji is the signing partner is known as engagement partner, and the engagement partner must ensure these responsibilities towards the leadership. That means leading the team, ensuring the ethical requirements about these fundamental principles, ensuring the independence of every team member, communicating to the management regarding the breach of the independence in between the audit, identification of such circumstances when threats towards the independence or the threats for the ethical guidelines or the threats towards the leadership occurring. So to inform the management, all these responsibilities are on the heads of the engagement partner. Then accept the new engagement or continue the existing engagement. This is also the responsibility on the engagement partner. And as per essay 220 as well, the integrity has to be considered as we have discussed in essay 210. That means before obtaining the new engagement, we have to check that integrity of the client. Beiman to nahi hai. Then the firm is competent to perform the audit engagement. Yes, before obtaining AL, we have checked this competence. Yes, sir. Then the firm can comply with the ethical requirements. That means the ethical requirement has not been compromised in any manner. This is the responsibility of engagement partner to ensure these things. Now, assignment of engagement team. Before assigning the engagement team, I have to take care of few points. The point number 1, my team members must be independent, right? Point number 2, my team should be competent. Point number 3, I should consider the nature, time, and extent of the audit. That's why I can judge that my team member is suitable or not to conduct the audit within the stipulated time period without hampering the audit quality. So this is again responsibility of engagement partner. If engagement partner is fulfilling or ensuring these 5 responsibilities, we can say that the engagement partner has put in all the best possible efforts to ensure the audit quality as per SA 220. So to ensure the quality of engagement performance, again, there are 5 points which I would like to share with you in a very brief manner, and these will surely help you even before obtaining the audit and also while conducting the audit. Now we are talking about while conducting the audit. The direction, supervision, and performance. This is the responsibility of engagement partner to provide the directions to the team members. What happens usually, the engagement partners comes in the picture only on the day when the financial statements are to be signed by the auditor. Before that, team members are doing everything and engagement partner is busy here and there. And at the end, okay, you have done everything is okay. Now I am going to sign the audit report. Done. No, sir. This is the duty of EEP to give the directions to the team, supervise their work. That means the review of the audit work on the time-to-time basis. He has to review the documentation as well, that proper documentation has been followed or not. One more thing, there should be determined policies, cleared policies in the firm or in the audit firm, that the independence, about the qualities, about the fundamental 5 principles of code of ethics of ICI, there must be determined policies about these. Our firm will follow these policies before obtaining an engagement and even after while performing our responsibilities on any assurance engagement. This is also the responsibility of management itself, right? Now, just a minute. Yes. Now, engagement quality control review. Everybody listen carefully with very much attentive mindset. At this time, you should not only be present, you should be available as well. How you can establish the policy of engagement quality control review in your office. My question to every one of you, there is a firm of 2 partners and 10 staff members. How you can ensure the engagement quality control review? Anybody would like to answer? Anyone who want to answer? Anybody wants to answer? Let me see the chat box. Second partner review has to be performed. Kulkarni sir, salute to you. Absolutely correct answer. Maker and checker concept, Akash sir. Yes, sir. Perfect. Somebody else? Now there are 2 partners only, Vishakha ma'am and Gitanjali ma'am. So Vishakha ji is engagement partner for the audit of ABC Infra Limited. Gitanjali ji is another partner, which she is not involved in the audit of ABC Infra Limited. So how in this firm they can implement the maker checker concept of the second partner review concept of the engagement quality control concept? Anybody want to answer? Vishakha ma'am or Gitanjali ji, Gayatri ji, Akash ji, Mandar sahab, Anil sir, Jagdish sir, anybody? Active students के नाम याद हो ही जाते हैं. Great listeners you people are. You can engage with external senior member. We can engage with external senior member also, but in this case there are 2 partners. Vishakha ji is engagement partner for ABC Infra Limited, and Gitanjali ji is not involved in audit of ABC Infra Limited. So what they are required to do before signing the audit report and financial statements, Vishakha ji will submit the entire documentation to Gitanjali madam and request her to do the independent review. Now, what they are required to do, Gitanjali will go through with the financial statements and their documentation thoroughly. She will spend 3-4 hours, and she will note down the questions and ask the question to Vishakhaji and all the audit team members. She will ask her doubts with them. If the engagement team is able to satisfy Gitanjali ji with their answers, then they will sign the report. Otherwise, in the gray areas or in the areas of doubt, audit team required to reperform their audit. Let me give you an example of engagement quality control review 10 years ago when I was in one of the big four. What happens with us? We have conducted the audit of a automobile giant, and the board meeting was finalized on 28th of April because of their reporting to Japan. On 27th of April, we have completed our audit. Our partner has done the review. Then thereafter, the file was sent to another partner. That was the engagement review partner, EQCR, we people called it EQCR process, engagement quality control review process. So that partner, another partner, second partner, while doing the review, he raised some questions about some CGUs. Yes, about some. I think by mistake my PPT got stopped. I am resharing once again, please. Yes. So in now. So in that case, he has some questions about CGU. CGU means cash generating units, and his doubt was about their carrying value in the books of accounts. He raised the doubt that the carrying value of these dies, these CGUs, these machineries are lower than the book value. The real value is lower than the book value because already the entities has shifted to BS3 to BS4, from BS3 to BS4, and these dies have been prepared for BS3 model only. These cannot be used for BS4 automobile models, and in that case, these shall not be in use. So we have to do the working of AS28, impairment of assets. And it was really wonderful thought given by the engagement partner, the review partner. The audit team was agree on that, and again we have to started our working for AS28 for all those CGUs which were used in the conveyor belt of BS3 entity, BS3 automobile parts. So how long will you take? Okay, ma'am. If members have any questions, kindly ask the question in the chat box. Though I try to cover up the questions, and about essays, I have covered more than 50 sessions in branches of all the 5 regions of ICI. So by default, some questions comes in our mind, some common questions, some important questions. So ma'am, I have covered those questions in suo moto. So if there is any question is pending, you can ask in the chat box as well, because I tried we should discuss more on the concept and the question should be covered simultaneously. In next 5 minutes, we are summing up. Then if there will be any question, we will do this. So this was the greatest example of engagement quality control review. And even client was agree. Yes, impairment working should be there. So this is the benefit of EQCR process. Now the difference of opinion, in sometimes we have the difference of opinion with the management, difference of opinion with the other expert, like for the gratuity purpose, the actuary has given his report, but you have the doubt on the information provided by the client to the actuary. The reasonable, sufficient and appropriate information was not provided. So that means you may have the difference of the opinion with the expert. Then also you have to mention this thing in your audit report. Now coming on the 10 questions and 5 questions, and we are summing up the entire session. Whether the sufficient appropriate audit evidence has been obtained to reduce the audit risk to an acceptable low level, and thereby to enable the auditor to draw the reasonable conclusion on which basis auditor's opinion is a matter of, okay, 3 answers are there. Matter of professional judgment, answer is B. Okay, somebody want to answer A, audit guidelines? Sir, audit guidelines are guiding us, but the sufficiency has never been defined in any of the guidelines. Sufficiency or the reasonableness, this is the state of mind. So this depends upon the professional judgment of an auditor. Everybody is giving correct answer. Thank you so much. When the auditor is unable to obtain the reasonable assurance and qualified opinion in the audit process, and such circumstances for the purpose are reporting to be intended to the users, that means he is thinking that the qualified opinion is also insufficient. In such case, as per as 220 and 210, what he should do? Disclaim the opinion, withdraw from the engagement. He can do anyone or none of the above. What is the correct answer? What is the correct answer? Focus on 2 words. If you are, Mandar sir, you are an auditor and you find that you are unable to obtain the reasonable assurance, and merely giving the qualified opinion is also insufficient. Sir, disclaimer is the stage 1 and qualification is the stage 2. Even the qualified opinion is insufficient, then how I can give the disclaimer? If the high dose medicine for 100 mg medicine is not effective, how I can say that doctor should use the 10 mg medicine if the 100 mg medicine is not effective? Sir, if qualified opinion is insufficient, disclaimer can never be an option for you. You have the only one option left in your hands, that is withdraw from the audit engagement. We are discussing 3-4 slides ago. We have discussed if you are not able to obtain the reasonable assurance and you think that even the qualified opinion is not an option for us, then we should withdraw from the engagement. Correct answer is B. A or C are not correct answers. If anybody have doubt, you can ask it. Why B is correct answer? Sir, when you think that I should give the disclaimer, that means I was not able to obtain sufficient documentation, then you prefer the disclaimer. But when you feel that I am not able to obtain the reasonable assurance and such thing as the material impact on the financial statements, and the stakeholder must be aware about it, so I should give the qualified opinion. That is the second stage. But when you believe that even the qualified opinion is insufficient, even after giving the qualified opinion as well, there may be breach of trust of stakeholders, such assurance is unreasonable. So in that case, the third option comes to withdraw from the assignment. So sir, you have the only option of withdrawal. Got it? In this case, when you find disclaimer or qualified opinion are insufficient, you have to go for withdrawal from the assignment only. Next question. Yes, adverse opinion can also be given, Vaibhav sir. But if adverse opinion is option to you, you can go for that. In case you feel that even the adverse opinion is also insufficient, then you should withdraw. Else qualified opinion or disclaimer, qualified opinion, then adverse opinion, and then withdrawal from the assignment. Adverse opinion is also an option for you, sir. Next question, which means the limitation which cannot be overcome and which are the with the subject since the inception or evaluation of the subject. Which is correct answer? Management limitations? No, sir. These are not are since the inception of the subject. Time constraint? No, never. Time constraints is always time limitations always comes in between the audit. Scope limitations? No. The inherent limitations. D is correct answer. Everybody has replied in the correct answer. Second last question, the audit firm should implement which policy to ensure all the audits are conducted in accordance with the audit and assurance standards? Detection control, quality control, management control, or internal control? Sir, when we talk about audit as per auditing standards, that means quality control. Last question, the complaints and allegation against the firm as regards to the non-compliance of the professional standards or the allegation of non-compliance of the firm's system of the quality control shall be dealt with. That means in the firm there is no proper system of quality control or the firm is not complying with the quality control system. Is there any legal requirement or any disciplinary action can be taken or C or D? Sir, when we talk about the internal system of quality control, correct answer is B. When we talk about the quality of the statement, then A and B both are the correct answers in that case. So correct answer is B. I am ending my presentation over here. If anybody of you have any question, you can ask. Though I tried to cover up most common questions during the discussion itself. My heartiest thanks to every one of you for staying with us. Again, very much thanks to very dedicated, hardworking, and I must say the exemplary professional chairman of Pune branch, Samir Ladda sir. Last year when I was chairman of Gurugram branch, Samir sir was Vikasa chairman of Pune branch. So we have discussed many of the programs and I witnessed some mega programs for the students in the last year as well. So my heartiest thanks to every one of you from my side. Oh, okay, somebody asked, Joshi asked this question, where this photo has been taken. Sir, this photo has been taken in Rameshwaram at Pamban Beach, Indira Gandhi Beach, sorry. At Indira Gandhi Bridge, it has been taken in the Rameshwaram. I visited 19 states of India till now. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I'm stopping my presentation and handing over to Smita ma'am. Or to Smita ma'am, please.
Thank you so much, Dheeraj ji, because it was absolutely wonderful and interactive session. And I could see that you kept like the entire audience engaged, like from beginning till end. So I once again thank you very much on behalf of the Pune branch. I also thank CA Samir Ladha and his team for bringing such an eminent speaker for everybody. And I declare that this first day of the VCM is over, and we will meet again tomorrow. So bye and good night.
Thank you. Bye.